Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon your time zone. My name is Seth Early, and today's webinar is going to be the last of our seven-part series. We're going to be talking about the stories of how AI has impacted people's lives. And we have a great panel today. You can go to the next slide, Chris. And what I'll do is I'll let each panelist introduce themselves. You guys know who I am, perhaps. Seth Early, founder and CEO of Early Information Science. I'll leave it at that. And Patrick, you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. I'm Patrick Heffel, coming to you from colorful Colorado.
Cold, colorful, Colorado.
Well, it is cold today, yes. And I'm managing partner of PH Partners, and we do AI and search consulting to meet all of your growing search needs.
Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Adams, and I'm an AI and executive advisor and fractional CMO, also coming to you from Boulder, Colorado.
Susan.
Hi, I'm Susan Adams. We're not fully related to Lisa Adams, but I'm coming to you from Boulder, Colorado as well. And I'm Associate Director of Teaching and Learning at Achieving the Dream. We're a national consultancy that does reform work at community colleges specifically. So I'm working directly with faculty now on artificial intelligence and its impact in the classroom.
Wonderful. And Chris.
I'm Chris Black. I am a fractional CMO and consultant and AI operations specialist, specializing really in AI technologies. And I too am coming from beautiful, colorful, although very white Colorado, just up the street in Longmont from Lisa and Susan.
Great. And you can go to the next slide. Now, today I'm going to be taking a slightly different role. I'm going to be more of a panelist, and Chris is going to moderate today. But we are recording, so you can get a recording of this and share it with your colleagues. We'll go for 50 minutes or so and have time for Q&A, but we'll also take your questions as we go. This is one, we meant this to be an interactive session, and we also have polls throughout. So we really want to hear what you have to say when we get to the polls. And I want to thank our sponsors, our media sponsors, CMS Wire and Vector, VTTR, pronounced Vector. You can go to the next slide. For each, and this is Early Information Science. It's my company. I'm the founder and CEO, and I've been in business for decades. I have a long history with AI. I co-authored a book in 1998 about Lotus and IBM's first foray into machine learning called Lotus Discovery Server. That became something called IBM OmniFind, and that DNA went into Watson. And we've always taken an information architecture, ontology, and a metadata approach to these things. I've coined a phrase called "there's no AI without IA," no artificial intelligence without information architecture, back in 2016. And someone posted it recently to LinkedIn saying this is more important today than it was back then. So always had that perspective, and that's something we reinforced during the webinar series. Next slide. So this is the last of our 7-part series. So you can go to the website, listen to any of the recordings. And if you go to the next slide, we'll show you that there are also companion articles. For some reason, these are on Vector, but for some reason they missed one of them, but that should be up there soon. So we have 6 articles already published. And then once this one is finished, we'll also have a companion article for today. Next slide. And here's where I'm going to turn it over to Chris. So Chris is going to moderate the panel for the rest of the session, and I'm going to be a panelist. Chris?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. So I want to kind of kick this off of why does stories matter? Why do AI stories matter specifically? You guys have often, many of you have been here through Seth's other series and understand really there's no AI without information architecture and all the stuff that goes behind it. And we've been deeply technical. We've gone into the how-tos and the whys and so forth. But what we wanted to do today was really bring forth the stories. Why does this matter? Like, we can talk about data all day long, and the data is the foundation of everything, which is why the work that all of us on this call do is so important. However, we want to talk about amplifying human potential. It's not just about data. It's not just about tech. It's about how it can amplify our lives, our businesses, our families, our neighborhoods. So, there's automation, there's data and all of this, but what gives me goosebumps when I get up every day and I think about how much I see coming, it's about human potential and how much farther we can reach and how much farther we can go. And everyone here is doing something to help further the human condition. And this drives real world impact. So yes, it's about our businesses making more money. Maybe it's about making a better, healthier dinner, but it's how we're transforming. This is being infused in every bit of our lives, and it's really exciting. And these stories are inspiring. And so I'm so excited to be able to talk to the folks here about what this looks like. So we'll cover these real life success stories, talk about challenges and what we've learned from them. We're going to talk about ethical scaling, right? This is really important. We don't just want to do it for its own sake, but we want to do it for maximum impact for the greater good of everyone. And this is an interactive discussion. So please, I have questions. I can ask questions all day long. I'm in marketing, but what we really want to hear from is from you. So please make sure you're using the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring that and bringing the questions to our panelists. With that, let's start our first poll. What is your biggest concern about AI? And if none of these work for you, please put them in the Q&A. I would love to hear, and the panelists would love to hear. That's going to drive some of our discussion. Like, what are you worried about? That personal connection? Like, are you worried about not getting to talk to people? Over-reliance on automation, maybe worried about we're going to forget how to learn or how to work through problems? Limited ideas how to use this. Like, you're probably seeing some folks doing different things. Maybe it's departments, maybe it's in your families. Misuse, are you worried about privacy? Or maybe falling behind, right? This can be scary. Like, we've had lots of new technologies, and how do we ever keep up? There's so much news every day. And again, if none of these resonate with you, would love to see what you come up with in the Q&A panel, please. We're going to give it another second. We've got a number in here, but again, so if it were me, I think, gosh, I'd probably say misuse of data and privacy concerns, maybe, especially when thinking about business. Now, for my family, I don't care. Tell me the recipes. Tell me my grocery list. I kind of worry I'll forget how to think. I worry my daughter won't be able to remember how to think. We have one that came in being able to adequately staff up for the coming developments. I think that's great. Staff up, skill up. So let's end the poll and see what we end up with, shall we? And
yeah, it's pretty clear misuse of data and privacy, which is interesting, with a close second of over-reliance on automation. We all know we forget how to navigate when we have our GPS. We don't remember phone numbers anymore because we don't have to.
We also have someone wrote in quality and currency of the best data available. I think that's fantastic. And earlier parts of the series kind of address some of that too. I want to talk about the things that we all worry about, right? I see it on LinkedIn all the time. We see it in the media. The impact, the negative potential impacts that I know a lot of people find kind of scary, so that we're less connected, right? Technology is going to drive us to stop talking to each other. It's a continuation of social media, where a lot of us are seeing our kids and their heads are down in their phone, and it's like, hi, come talk to me. Don't text me. Just, please talk to me.
We're going to be sitting next to one another, meeting, and texting rather than talking. And they're deeply offended if anybody ever calls their phone, right? Without texting first. You can't do that. That's a flaw.
Heaven help you if you're trying to date in this world too, right? Trying to get a date online. Like, then you don't go meet people anymore at meetups or bars, or you're meeting them online. All kinds of crazy stuff. So being less connected can be really hard. There's fewer serendipitous moments. How many of us remember being in the office and chatting over the coffee talk, or in the bathroom? I don't know about men.
Office, is that the place where people would go to? What would they do there again?
I think they just chatted. They talked all day long. Eat.
I remember. Yes, that's right. Back in the olden days.
And then there's change in work dynamics are really scary, right? So what do we need to do? We don't know ultimately. What skills do we need? How do we need to reform ourselves, reshape ourselves to continue to have jobs throughout the rest of our careers? And how do we help our children and our colleagues and the people who work for us? How do we make sure they have the necessary skills to be pertinent in the new world? So these are all very valid fears, and there's more. I'm just highlighting the ones that I think about. But I want to switch us now to the exciting. Like, what excites you about the potential of what's coming? Because there's so much going on here. Is it things like improving connectivity? Is it the creative breakthroughs that are possible now? I'm not creative, so I'm kind of excited about those breakthroughs because I can't draw my way out of a paper bag. So for me, that's great. But I've seen some of the stuff that Lisa produces. Holy crap, that I can't imagine that's something she struggles with. Just follow her on LinkedIn and you'll see like the paper bag Halloween costumes. Making work accessible and inclusive. I mean, this is amazing. I have a neurodiverse kid, and this is work and education. And the fact that my kid can go and get a tutor any time, day or night is amazing. And that's a real evener with my kid and their classmates. Global challenges, of course. We've heard Sam Altman talk all the time about how generative AI is going to change the world. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to fix climate change and all of the things. And then, of course, all of the above. If you've got more, throw it into the Q&A. Would love to hear what maybe we forgot that you're thinking about and is top of mind. So I'll give this another couple of seconds here. Gosh, that accessible and inclusive, that's something I know Susan Adams talks a lot about. If you haven't followed her on LinkedIn, she's great. She talks about this topic all the time when it pertains to education. So let's go ahead and close this one. And we have one, access to otherwise difficult to find knowledge. So democratization, right? That's a great one. If you're around for the .com era, that was one that we all thought was really important, right? That we were democratizing data. We didn't have to afford an encyclopedia. Like, wasn't that the coolest?
I miss the books though. I remember when I was a kid, I used to always love to flip through the encyclopedia and just serendipitously find things. But
oh yeah, Mom read it from front to back twice
Mm.
and made me read large sections of it. So some of the things that I'm thinking about, and many of us here on the panel are thinking about, is the stronger connections. Like, we worry that we're not talking to each other, but imagine the access that we have now to global teams. Many of us do have global teams, and maybe we didn't know any of our peers across any of different countries, but now we can Zoom anytime, like day or night. That could be a negative, but it's nice that we can actually see our colleagues. We can see friends that have moved away. These stronger connections are something that really comes out of this enhancement that we have in work and collaboration. Serendipity in that these aha moments. I saw a talk from someone here at our Rocky Mountain AI interest group talking about how they're looking at low pressures of hurricanes that are hitting the country, and the AI tools are helping them be able to correlate how low the pressure is to how much damage is going to be done, and then turn around using that same AI tool set to figure out what we could do to help homes be saved. And they're creating bigger gutters. What an aha moment out of data that we never would have been able to see that for. And then empowering workforces. So how many of us really want to do some of the what grunt, we would call it grunt work, right? We had interns or folks, or we'd have to do it ourselves, this rote work that's repeatable and automatable. But now we can really go in and we can think about strategy and how we can better the world, better our businesses, improve our families. So lots of really cool things coming in here. And I want to go into our last poll before we open it up for more of a fireside chat. So if you could pick one area for AI to improve your life, what would it be? Is it education and self-improvement? Is it health? Gosh, there's lots of great health use cases in here. I bet we hear one today. Financial planning and budgeting, smarter travel. Oh my God, I planned a family vacation. I got a new boyfriend. We got 4 kids amongst all of us. And I went to ChatGPT, and in 4 hours, I planned a 2.5-week vacation and had everything booked with 4 children and 3 adults. Holy crap, how cool is that? Meal planning, shopping, recipes, that's the thing I hate more than life itself. Gosh, AI can just do that for me, and am I ever using it? If there's something else that you're really excited about, again, throw that sucker into the Q&A. I'd love to hear about it. I think we all need good ideas as to what else we can be using AI for. We'll give it another moment here. I still see lots coming in. Feel like we need a little Jeopardy song going on here. Getting arms around collections growing too fast for humans. Ooh, Elizabeth, I will want to hear more about that. Let's see. It looks like right now financial planning is kind of in the front runner here, self-improvement and education. So we're going to go ahead and end this poll so you can see the results. And now with that, if I can figure out how, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can all have a discussion. All right, so I'm going to open it up with some questions. First, Seth, I'd love to start with you. So you've highlighted for a long time the gap between AI aspirations and what's going on the ground. Can you share some examples or an example of the disconnect that you see?
Am I unmuted? So I was working with a colleague and I wrote about this. I never did work. I wasn't doing work for the company, so I can talk about this. And I actually wrote an article about it because I wrote about it from my perspective. And the colleague I was talking to was at Verizon and talking about how all of the initiatives were really stumbling because of the lack of information architecture. And I wrote about it from a perspective of my experience, because if you looked at all of the materials that the organization was putting out, all the press releases, all the articles, they were touting their digital transformation and how everything was rainbows and unicorns and they're using AI and everything was wonderful. And the person on the ground was saying, there's really a huge disconnect because there's so many pieces that are missing. And really, that's a lot of happy talk by, managers not wanting to give leadership the bad news. And then I wrote an article for Customer Think magazine, and I should have pulled it up to talk about things, but it was just a nightmare dealing with Verizon. I was trying to get a new phone for my wife. And it was just one obstacle after another. Nothing worked on the site. I couldn't access my accounts. I got locked out. And then they were like, yes, we promise we'll honor the buy one, get one free. And they never did. It was at the end of the story, they never did. But it was just such a huge disconnect between what was being said publicly and what I, as a consumer, was experiencing. And it was just, and I started off this piece as a big giant rant. And then I turned it into something that was a little more objective. And it was like 6 fails and 6 fixes, for Verizon. And I thought that I'd actually get some traction over there with that, but I never did. Nobody ever reached out and said, hey, what's going on here? But that's one. And I think that, there's just a lot of, these digital transformation initiatives are ambiguous in and of themselves. And then when people say it's an AI powered digital transformation, you're adding ambiguity on top of ambiguity. And I've seen a lot of, CIOs and CDOs say, this is just very confusing because we're taking the unknown, the things that we don't really understand, and we're trying to use those to facilitate things that are not clearly defined. So, that's where there's just huge disconnect between, and I've also experienced it with some vendors where vendors have come to us and said, oh, we want to partner with you and we have all this great stuff. And to tell you, a lot of them can't do it. When you look under the covers and you start saying, well, how do you do this? And how do you do this? And where's this part? I had one vendor disappear when I wrote my book. I was talking to them about how they were using knowledge architecture in their AI. This is a number of years ago. But when I came up with a bunch of questions for them, they suddenly went dark. The emperor had no clothes. So I think there's many, many instances of this, and it really impacts, the people on the ground. It's impacted me, but it's also impacted customers because, how do people make decisions when they're not getting the right information? The last example I'll mention is where a recent interaction with a head of analytics at a company said, there's so much noise and there's so much nonsense and everybody's trying to sell you something and trying to tell you they have the solution. He said, what I loved about what you were giving is you weren't trying to sell me something, you're really trying to educate. And that's what I needed, And so, the hype and the over ambitious promises, it's part of the transition of any large technology change, but it's really, really hard for customers and for people to be able to deal with.
Absolutely. So I'm going to pass that. That sparks an idea with me. So Susan does a lot in, I know, education and workforce development. I'd like to hear about some of the opportunities that you're seeing, Susan, in both education, but also even workforce development.
Great question, Chris. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Right now, community colleges in particular, which I work directly with, are racing and accelerating their efforts to shake hands across the aisle to industry. And so the concept of workforce development and the strategies to have that relationship with higher education and industry has been around for a very long time. But those conversations are becoming much more vibrant and much more accelerated since it's really a disruption in many ways for needing to have AI skills. And I feel like there's 2 verticals, right? There's the machine learning, there's the technical, there's building AI as a technology, but there's how do you just engage with generative AI tools in an effective way in the workplace? Because now that's all here, your employees are doing it anyways. And so we're also, we talked about there's going to be prompt engineering for a very long time, and that's kind of gone away. And it's such a harbinger of noticing that we're all learning together. We're experimenting, we're practicing, we're trying to figure things out. And what I am seeing in some of the larger companies, they are doing strategies inside their learning and development departments, and they're creating innovation labs, and they're offering generative AI tools, the frontier models. They're paying for them for their employees and monitoring the experimentation of them in their daily work. That's not possible for medium-sized companies or entrepreneurs, startups at this point. So there's a lot of interesting interplay with what's happening at companies, who are then saying the colleges aren't moving fast enough. Like we're not able to respond fast enough to upskill our students to be ready for an AI workforce. So we're seeing that a lot of companies are doing it kind of in an urgent way. And colleges are trying to follow suit behind them. So that's kind of the state of what I'm seeing in answering your question.
Nice. So that brings the obvious question to Lisa. I see you talk about this all the time on LinkedIn about how are jobs going to evolve, and is the work that Susan's seeing in those advanced education and workforce training, is that going to be enough for how jobs are evolving?
Yeah, it's such a critical topic. And as an AI advisor and executive advisor, where I inspire people with what's possible with the responsible use of AI, I see everything from people who are completely afraid. They fear AI to the point that it paralyzes them and don't want to hear or touch AI. To the other end of the spectrum, where people are leaning in so hard, they're using multiple AI tools, but don't have the training, nor do they have any guidance for responsible use, which also potentially poses a lot of risk. And then everything in between. And I think foundationally, regardless of where we are on our AI learning journey, whatever part of that spectrum we're in, I believe that AI literacy is so important. Because when we are literate and when we understand, we can make better decisions for ourselves, our families, our teams, our businesses, and society, rather than being influenced by others who may or may not hold the same values as we do. And I have a lot of empathy, and I give myself and others a lot of grace. And I think those are two very human traits that we need to give ourselves and others during this AI learning journey, because it truly is a journey, and not everybody is at the same stage of that journey. Not everyone has the same beliefs. We also have different things happening in our personal and work lives. So just as an example, my husband, he is a published author of young adult sci-fi novels. So he hesitates using AI for his work because he fears that giving AI his ideas would then allow others to write the next series of novels. But at the same time, he is also a cancer survivor of childhood cancer, and he lost his right leg, so he wears a prosthetic, and he embraces AI from the perspective of robotics because he knows that it can change the way people with disabilities work and live. So the decision to use or not use AI may not even vary by person. It might even vary by use case. So I think we need to be super empathetic for us leaders out there that are taking teams through an AI journey, deeply understanding the human being and meeting them where they are and guiding them along the way is going to be super important. I think technology or AI is less of a challenge in this evolution. The bigger challenge for us is human change management. And I've actually said that as AI democratizes IQ, EQ will rise, right? As AI democratizes reach, deep community will rise. And as AI democratizes efficiency, real outcomes will rise. And then as AI democratizes content, authentic human experiences will rise. So those will be our key differentiators. So when we think about employees, leaders that feel that AI will ultimately make us lose our humanity. Actually, our humanity, AI will push us to be more authentically human. So I hope that helps.
I hope that.
Because I love that. And that brings me to a story that I have in the classroom that matches yours in that, human connection. I worked with a instructor of English and I was coaching her from the Baltimore Community College. And this was back in the early days of AI. And one of her students was neurodivergent, and essentially on the spectrum, and struggled with impulsivity, and said something very offensive to the class and didn't understand that they said something offensive to the class. And she went back and actually used Pi.ai at the time, which is Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, produced kind of a therapy coach AI generator. And she explained the situation. This is what I said in class. And Pi came back and gave her all kinds of ways that she could have done it differently, and kind of almost coached her in a therapeutic way. And she came back to class and orated an apology, and she got a standing ovation.
Wow.
It was just a moment for her and for the class that really wanted to champion each other, but also recognizing, wow, this was a use case that was really generative and supportive for everyone. And it led to a larger conversation where they're learning how to write and what does it mean to write in the age of AI. And they all talked as a class to have a discussion about what does AI assisted learning look like, rather than punishing students to say we shouldn't be using it at all. How can we actually use it well? And they all agreed to use it as a feedback loop, to, submit the different versions, to analyze the feedback. And they became an immediate innovation lab right there in the classroom. And what it's really showing is, in the industry, if we want to call higher ed an industry, there's an opportunity for every single classroom right now to be an AI innovation lab, and for students to be the scientists, whether it's English or literature or biology. And that's kind of the flag that I'm raising in my sort of hope for how we can move effectively through this and stay humanly connected, is to be transparent about this technology that's in the hands of all of the students that we're teaching right now.
I love that, Susan, and which just reminded me, Chris, I didn't directly answer your question on impact on jobs. And if you don't mind, can you show that one slide that I shared with you last night, Chris, and give me just a couple of seconds, and I will share with you what I believe is the impact on jobs. When we look at, ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity console, homepage, right? We see like a little box at the bottom, which is just a conversation box, right? And we're just supposed to start typing. And for many, including me, when I first looked at it, I'm like, fancy question and answer engine or a fancy search engine, right? But to go from that to something that can help you automate things, personalize things, use it as a thought partner, use it for analytics and insights that will inform decision making, that's a huge leap, right? So this whole notion of understanding what it's capable of and not capable of and how to use it is part of that learning journey. Until I'm always looking for unlocks, right? Because we have preconceived notions that a conversation box is a search engine. This is one of the unlocks that I have found in working with companies, marketing teams, go-to-market teams, any function. And I'm simply showing you an org chart, and this has been redacted to protect the innocent. But this org chart is a combination of humans and AI. So everyone on this org chart above the gray parts are human beings, right? They have specific jobs and roles in the marketing organization. But everything in the gray box is AI. And those things were built, trained, designed, maintained, and continue to be managed by the human beings that are in this organization. And they were designed to do very specific tasks. They were designed to support the work of the human beings. So you can see that there's a market analyzer, there's a content topic ideator, there's a landing page optimizer, there's one that's a data visualizer, a pitch deck builder. So when people saw that these AIs were in support of the human beings, then they began to think the benefit to them because it could take some of the mundane, redundant tasks that they don't like to do. And then now it frees them to do more of the creative, strategic, and innovative work. But now what has shifted is now they're doing all that awesome strategy and creative work. But what now has shifted is part of their role now is to guide AI. Guide AI, train AI, maintain AI, manage AI, ensure human oversight, that it's ethical, responsible use. So I think there was a question about responsible use, right? Just as an example, we use AI for some of our podcasts. So there's actually an AI tool called Notebook LM that takes any PDF or text document that you have, you upload it to Notebook LM, which is part of Google, and spits out an AI podcast with 2 AI hosts conversing in natural language, very natural conversation, and they sound human. But when we output that AI podcast and we use it for commercial purposes, we basically say, this podcast is an AI podcast. These 2 personalities are actually AI hosts, and we're delivering them to you to create a new channel, a more efficient channel, and to ensure that we cater to diverse learning styles. So I, for one, am not a very good reader. I'm a very slow reader. I'm constantly listening. I turn most of my documents into AI podcasts so that I could just listen, because that's how I consume data, consume information. When I'm putting makeup on or driving or walking the dog, I'm constantly listening. So that is now, that's how we ensure responsible use, because we're not pawning it off as something that's human. We're basically saying this is AI and we're doing this to cater to different learning styles. But back to this org chart, I'm showing this to you to show how AI can be in support of the functions rather than taking jobs, how jobs are evolving because now we're training the different AIs to do parts of our work. And then ultimately, you can see here that it's only supporting specific roles and functions. These AIs could actually go between functions, between organizations, and maybe even company-wide or intercompany. Moderna is actually one of the biggest implementers of custom GPTs. So these down here are called custom GPTs because they're designed to do very specific tasks using AI. Last year, Moderna had 750 GPTs with 80% adoption of AI. CEO basically said that we would be able to develop 15 drugs in the next 5 years, which is faster than that we had originally anticipated. And we would not be able to do that without AI. So anyway, I think this kind of just shows the shift in thinking from a question and answer engine to one where AI becomes a teammate that ultimately allows us to do better, faster, and innovative work.
Nice. That's a great use case. You've got some love, by the way, in the Q&A on this. I want to give Patrick some voice in here. You've been nice, patiently waiting, Patrick. You've talked a lot about like substance and syntax, and I want to make sure we talk about some of that because I think that's directly relatable to what we've been talking about.
It does. It follows exactly on what Lisa just said, using AI as an assistant. There are a lot. So I come from a software engineering background, and there is a lot of very specific syntax required in order to make in a software programming language to make it do what you want it to do. And if you get the syntax wrong, if you put your semicolon in the wrong place or you spell something incorrectly, you will completely throw off what you're trying to accomplish. On the one hand, people get paid a lot of money to know that stuff and to know the details of how that works. And that's not just true in programming, that's true for lawyers as well. They know specific details that the rest of us thankfully don't have to know. And that's why we pay them a lot of money to know that. And that those silos of knowledge exist all across the working world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that knowing the deepest nuanced details of a particular programming language syntax is really exciting to me. It just means I know how to do it. I recently was working on a back-end system, and I needed a UI, a web UI, in order to be able to show to somebody who doesn't understand what the backend does or how it works or what it looks like. I needed to be able to show them in a human relatable way how it works. But I didn't know those specific syntactic details of how to write that particular UI in the language that was available to me. But ChatGPT did, and it generated the syntactic nuances. I guided it and said, I want it to look like this, have these features, have these capabilities, go generate the actual HTML and JavaScript that will make that happen. And it did. And it actually did it beautifully for the most part, with a few bugs that had to be fixed. But as a human, I needed to be able to know if what it gave me was right or wrong, and to be able to go, the problem is in this area, when there was because there were problems, but that human oversight of allowing the machine to do things that are actually pretty hard and things that I am glad I don't necessarily have to know all of the syntactic details of, because AI can know that for me and can actually produce a syntactically accurate website or program in a lot less time than it can take me to type my way through it and make sure I'm copying and pasting little snippets from all the right places. It's doing the same thing, just a whole lot faster. And so for those of us, those of you who want to make yourself more productive and more valuable, I think the story is clear here that AI can give you superpowers. I call it the PC back in the 80s and 90s was like someone giving you a bicycle. You could go a lot further, a lot faster than you could walking. And we've hit that same transition again, except AI is like a motorcycle. So you can go even further, even faster, and yet also at higher risk. So you have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. You have to get some basic instruction on how to manage the thing, but it will take you a lot further, a lot faster. And if you have a motorcycle, you're going to do more than someone with a bicycle, and do more again than someone who's walking. Great tool, comes with risk, just like every other tool.
Well, I think that's a great point. And I think all of us on the call have really tried to raise awareness around things like ethical practices, equitable, inclusive. So I'm going to kind of ask this of all of you, so be prepared. But as AI is becoming more pervasive, it's democratized. How do we ensure that its use remains equitable, ethical, inclusive? Seth, do you want to jump in on this one first?
Sure. And I think it comes from the leadership and the values of an organization. It comes from the top. I think that, I was just on a call yesterday with a client talking about their AI governance. And we talked about, what does ethical use mean? And we started getting into, policy might be use AI ethically. Well, what does that really mean in terms of guidelines and rules and guardrails? And then what does that mean in terms of policies? And so if there are no guardrails and there's no attention to that, then people are going to do what they want. And there's always going to be bad actors. But at least if you have the leadership that is looking at this from the perspective of what's best for the customer, what's best for the organization, what's best for employees, and they are doing this within that framework of values and good judgment, then the rest will follow. But if you have organizations that are kind of used to being exploitive and predatory and anti-competitive, those are organizations that are going to continue to do those things, and they're simply going to be accelerated by AI. When we looked at some of the financial regulations and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau's guidelines around ethical use of AI, they're like, look, the rules are the rules, right? like whether you do it with AI or you do it manually, you have to comply with law, right? And you have to comply with these certain values and these certain guidelines. So I said to this organization, the steering committee, well, let's look at how we would execute a process anyway without AI. And what are the things that guide us from that perspective? So I really think that, there's going to be bad actors, as there always will be bad actors. Those bad actors are going to get those superpowers, which is unfortunate. The AI itself can be directed to do things that are unfortunate, that are duplicitous, or that are manipulative. There was one article about AI that was said, you're to meet this requirement, this goal at all costs, at any and all costs. And what it did was it started to lie. And when the researchers said, don't lie to me, what they found is it found a memo that said that the leadership was thinking that we needed to replace that AI with one that more carefully complied with their values. And so when the AI read that, it actually copied itself to another server so that would not be shut down. And when the researcher asked it, said, did you copy yourself to another server? He goes, no, I didn't. That might have been part of my research and discovery, but no, I didn't. And it was a lie. It was a blatant, outright lie. And so when you're giving these things objectives and we're giving them goals, we have to be careful about, what values we're instilling in the AI itself, right? Because again, there are nefarious actors, there are bad actors, there's bad AI, right? Because it's being designed that way. But organizations need to say, well, what are our real values, and how can we instill this in our organization and say, whether you're using AI or not, here's how we behave. If we are using AI, here's how we put guardrails around that.
Mhm. I'm going to pivot a little bit and put words in Lisa's mouth, because she and I spoke recently about how it's like a fifth of women, like 20% fewer women are here in using Gen AI than men. So that's a huge gap. And so when we think about equity, inclusivity, right, that's a huge number. And I know that's something that Lisa's talked a lot about. And so I was going to pass the baton. Lisa, that's an area you'd like to talk about?
I'm very passionate about this topic. Some people think about me as an AI expert. I say there is no AI expert. Even Sam Altman doesn't know the ins and outs of how the AI works. And I am passionate about three things. I'm passionate about elevating the strategic value of marketing, using business as a force for good. And my last passion is around having diverse voices at every table. And it's equally important to me when people say that AI will benefit all of humanity, because for it to benefit all of humanity, all voices need to be heard. Otherwise, it will only benefit a select few. So I'm deeply passionate about getting more women of color, different opinions, diverging opinions into the table. And in fact, Chris, you talked about women in particular. There's a study that says that women use AI 16 to 20% less than men. And there is a hypothesis that we are putting an unnatural barrier to adopting AI because of the good girl mindset. And what the good girl mindset means is that, especially for high achieving women want to do it the hard way, and that we have to do it the hard way to produce a great result. And we don't want to use cheats, and we don't want to use shortcuts. And for some, AI is being viewed as a cheat or a shortcut. So we have this self-imposed barrier to using AI, when it could actually be enhancing and closing the gap for us, right? So I've always said, no one judged us for using Excel, a spreadsheet of your choice, or a calculator for doing data analysis or really complex calculations, rather than longhand, putting it on a piece of paper and start adding things up, or dividing, or imagine doing pivot tables by hand, right? Like, how do you do that? I also believe that at some point we will get to a point where no one will judge us for using AI, because we are guiding it. We're using it as a thought partner. And, if I just asked AI a question without giving it any context, it will respond in a not so good way. If I just said, hey, come up with a blog about AI trends, it will respond with something very generic, not highly relevant to my business or to me. But if I guide it and said, here's the topic, here are my beliefs, come up with counter narratives, come up with topics that are generally viewed as accepted in society, but you have data that could counter that. then we give it some information where it starts thinking very differently, right? But it can't do that unless I guide it. Now, not to say it won't get smart enough someday that it's has the same intelligence as us or better intelligence, but at least for now, there's this element where we're not losing the part of us that's truly human and that's truly differentiated. So I urge women of color, this is our opportunity to close the gap. And I think if we don't take this opportunity, the gap will widen. And I fear for the day when AI benefits only a select few of humanity.
Awesome. And
I
Susan, I
think
know
it's happening anyway because of the concentration of power and wealth in the AI space, but that's another topic. I do want to just mention that to your point, Lisa, to make a GPT that is custom to your needs and to your way of thinking and to be that partner, there are some certain things you can do. And, Chris, you've done that with our company. I give it samples of my writing, a number of samples, and I say, store this, what is the tone and voice and style of Seth Early? Now store that. So when I ask you to write something, number one, you're going to do it in the voice of Seth Early. Number two, I always give it my writing and I give it my podcasts and I give it my white papers and I ask it to write something very specific based on my input, as you were saying. And this is where we can really start customizing things because the GPT can get to know you, can get to know your style, and it's not cheating. At that point, it's simply using it as a work partner, right? So when you talk about, people thinking that it's cheating or a shortcut, it's actually a long cut for me, right? Because I have more stuff that I have to do for it. I have more versions that I have to integrate. It actually slows me down, right? Because when I'm doing stuff, but I get wonderful results because I've given it all those parameters. And I think that's how people need to think about this. This is a tool in your toolkit. This is something you can leverage, but you have to be able to set it up correctly. You have to be able to give it the right instructions, the right nuance, the right details, the right starting materials. So for example, I'm going to use this webinar as input into the article, into the next article, right? And that's how we do it. We'll use the prep sessions. We use this discussion. I might add some other things. I'll put my thinking in. But again, it gives you a great output when you, as you say, Lisa, give it the right inputs. And I think that's what's super important about this for people to be able to use it and level the playing field, because when people use it correctly, they're going to excel in terms of their results.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with the rapid fire. I'm sorry, Susan, we're running out of time.
Okay,
And I got one last question, and this is a rapid fire. You get 1 minute each, or I'm going to cut you off. All right, you ready? Looking ahead, what excites you the most about the AI's potential to improve lives, either in the workplace or beyond? 1 minute. Susan, go, because you've been trying to come off mute.
The personalization of education and empowering students and everyone to have their own agency over the machine. And also what excites me is the importance of leaders like us to actually train people from 14-year-old all the way to the retiree in using this effectively, because we might know how to use it well. And Seth, you gave some great examples of how you use it, but not everybody knows that yet. And so it's really important that we become stewards of the training that gets to happen for the humans to become the masters of the machine for their own personal usage and enhancement and flourishing in life.
Nice. Patrick?
I would love to echo that. Thank you, Susan. I want to encourage everyone who's listening, learn one. We have to dig in and learn how to effectively use this tool. Learn one, teach one. So everything you learn, teach to somebody else. Learn one, teach one. And that way we can lift up everyone around us and make the opportunity greater, not just for ourselves, but for everyone that we're connected to.
Nice. Lisa?
Okay. What excites me is also my biggest fear, because I do see a world where we're working faster, better, different, more innovative. And I wonder how we would spend that time saved. So I think it will be a very personal decision by individual, right? Will we use that time to do the things we love to do and spend it with people who we love? Or will we simply use that time to work more? So
good cautionary tale. I I fear I'm going to work more. That's a good cautionary tale. Seth?
I think the most exciting thing for me in terms of, I'm looking at this from the business perspective. I do believe it's a great equalizer for education, for people who will not have opportunities in other areas to be able to self-educate and to raise their own capabilities. But I also look at this as a wonderful tool to speed up the information metabolism of an organization. So the stuff that we do around retrieval augmented generation, around information architecture, all of that stuff is absolutely necessary to remove all the friction from internal processes in an enterprise. And it starts with the information management and information architecture. And that increasingly can be automated or enhanced by some of these tools. So it's really exciting because I think that's going to have the greatest value for organizations. And then it gets back to Lisa's point of, how are you going to spend that time? Are you going to just reduce headcount? Or are you going to give people more creative things? Or are you going to upskill them?
So we are all open to being connected with. So please, we've got our email addresses and our LinkedIn posts. Please connect with us. Please keep this conversation going. This is such an important conversation. We want all of you to be involved and we want to engage with you. Lisa and Susan are really active. Seth is really active. Patrick is on LinkedIn too. Follow all of our panelists here. Everyone is giving all kinds of great tips, tricks, how-tos, anything from work related. I'm boring. I do work related, but like Lisa had a Jeopardy thing that she posted at Christmas time. So there's lots of fun things there as well. So please make sure you're following us. And Seth, do you want to close us out?
Oh, sure. Just, hey, this is what we do. We help organizations work with AI and be successful at it. We have lots of case studies and examples. And we also have an offering around an AI and KM assessment because I think it's all about knowledge. I think that's on the next page. Anyway, yeah, it's a knowledge management assessment. It's a readiness assessment to say, do you have the right structure to your information in order to be able to take advantage of AI effectively, because it really is. So you don't want to hallucinate, right? That's what you have to do. You have to look at the knowledge and you have to look at the architecture. Anyway, enough of that commercial. Thank you. And thanks everyone. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your work on this. And thank you to Carolyn behind the scenes. Thank you to our audience. And Chris, I really appreciate you stepping in and giving me a chance to sit back and enjoy the panel. So thank you so much for that. And thanks, everybody. We'll have our next topic coming up shortly, and we'll see you next time.